Good morning. I hope so far this day that God has blessed you. He's going to give you the opportunity later today to be able to worship with children of God of like precious faith, and that as a result of such, your joint participation with them will also be a blessing to you. We again want to let you know we appreciate you listening to these lessons. My name is Charles Wright. I'm the evangelist of the Spearsville Road Church of Christ in Trafalgar, Indiana. And so we're so thankful for those of you who've listened to us over the last year. We want to continue our study this morning from 1 Thessalonians. We're in chapter 5 this morning, 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 14 and 15. We've noted earlier in our study of 1 Thessalonians that Paul describes Christians as those who are children of the light, as the children of the day. As such, we have responsibilities as well as duties. We're told in 1 Timothy 5 and verse 6 to watch and to be sober. We're told in verse 8 of chapter 5 to put on the breastplate of faith and love with hope as a helmet. We're told to comfort and to edify one another. In the lesson last week, we talked about our duty toward those who serve us and to recognize them and to esteem them highly in love. Our responsibilities as children of light and children of the day continue, as we also want to notice this morning our duty to those who are in need. Both in the church as well as out of the church, there are those in need from Christians. Some may not even be aware of their need, yet still our duty is there and it remains. For example, we have the duty of warning those who are unruly, as verse 14 of 1 Thessalonians 5 tells us. If you identify those who are unruly, it means simply those who are disorderly, those who are out of ranks. It's used often of soldiers who fall out of line, deviating from the prescribed order of rule. The unruly Christian is one who does not abide by the teachings of the apostles. From the beginning, faithful Christians continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine as the church was established there in Acts chapter 2. The apostle Paul encouraged the Thessalonians to do likewise. We're also to warn those who are unruly. Warning brethren, again, is a crucial component of preaching Christ. Paul warned the brethren at Ephesus in Acts chapter 20. He encouraged Timothy in 2 Timothy 4 also to do the same. Unruly brethren who do not heed this warning are to be marked. They are to have fellowship withdrawn from them in an effort to simply save the unruly. And we'll talk more about this when we look at 2 Thessalonians chapter 3. It's an effort, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians 5, to simply keep the church pure. For those who are unruly, their need is to be warned. We should never fault those brethren who fulfill their duty to warn those who are unruly, but we should be thankful that they have the concern, that they have the courage to do so. But then also in verse 14, we're told to comfort those who are faint-hearted. The word faint-hearted simply means small-souled or little-souled. Sometimes it's translated as timid. It simply means or describes someone who loses heart, who's prone to dropping out. In other words, quitters. There's various conditions that might lead people to lose heart. Tribulation, persecutions, lack of immediate results sometimes causes people not to remain faithful to the Lord. And so we are to comfort the faint-hearted. Again, encourage them, console them, as Paul did here in Thessalonica, as well he did on multiple occasions. So we need to see and we need to realize that there's a distinction. Some brethren who are unruly need to be warned. They need to be admonished, while others who are the faint-hearted may need a more tender touch in order to be encouraged. But then there's another duty that's similar to comforting the faint-hearted, and that's found in verse 14 as well, where he tells us to uphold the weak. When you identify the weak, those are the ones who are in need. But more likely it refers to those who are weak in the faith, as it was, who are likely to violate their weak consciences, who are tempted maybe to sin. So we are to uphold the weak. We are to uphold the weak by receiving them, not to argue over things in which they have doubts, nor to despise them because of their weak faith. We should recognize upholding the weak by, again, bearing with their scruples that they might have, making an effort simply not to put stumbling blocks in their way, determining not to destroy our brother through the use simply of our liberties. Brethren who are weak in the faith need time to grow. Their consciences have to become strong. And so our duty, as Romans 15 and verse 2 says, is that each of us are to please his neighbor for his good, leading to edification. But then finally, in verses 14 and 15 of 1 Thessalonians 5, he talks about toward all men. He says, toward all men we are to be patient. Certainly we're to be patient with the faint-hearted, with the weak, but we're also to be patient with those that we teach, even when it's time to rebuke, to warn the unruly, even when we're dealing with those who simply oppose us. We're also told to render not evil for evil to anyone, as he tells us there. And that's a principle, again, that's been taught by the Lord all the way back in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, verses 44 and 45. Here Paul expounds upon it. Peter expounds upon it as well within his epistle. But then last of all, he says to pursue. Pursue what is good. In other words, for yourselves, you put forth all the effort that you can to make sure that those things that make for peace and who edify one another that we find. Things like righteousness and godliness and faith and love and patience and gentleness and holiness, that all of these things we make certain that we have within our lives and that we practice. But for all people, he tells us that we are honorable and that we honor ourselves by being honest and trustworthy with individuals. We simply do things that are good for those who are in need. Civil obedience as well, as far as kind words, gentleness, meekness, all are things that are necessary within our lives. But then also prayers. We should offer prayers on the behalf of individuals with the knowledge of the truth that will lead to their salvation. And so again, these are the 6 duties, as he tells us here, to those who are in need: to warn those who are unruly, to comfort those who are faint-hearted, to uphold those who are weak, to be patient simply with all, to render no one evil for evil, to pursue what is good for simply each and every one of us. You know, in a world that's filled with much evil, with much moral depravity, those who do such things are truly children of the light. They're children of the day. And is this true of us? That's the question you need to ask yourself this morning. And if not, then we need to heed this exhortation from the Apostle Paul, where he says, for you were once darkness, but now you're light in the world. Walk as children of the light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, finding out what is acceptable to the Lord. Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of those things which are done by them. But all things that are exposed are made manifest by the light, for whatever makes manifest is light. Therefore he says, awake, you who are asleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. That's a passage found in Ephesians chapter 5, parts of verses 8 through 14. And so again, brethren, are we sleeping? Are we asleep at simply what we need to be doing for others, putting forth the efforts to help those who are in need? There's a great need, especially in the world in which we live in today with the COVID and all of those other things that's happening to people, and we need to be there for them. And so in any way, shape, or form that you can be, please do such. Again, we want to thank you for listening to these messages. We continue to invite you to listen on Wednesdays and Sundays as we deliver these lessons from 1 Thessalonians, and we'll continue to do so. And then after that, we'll look at 2 Thessalonians. And so again, we simply bid you and hope that God is blessing you.